I am Josiah Evans, 72 years old, and I thought I had raised my daughter right. I was wrong. Last Tuesday, she and her husband stormed into my kitchen. My son-in-law, Greg, threw a piece of paper on the table. $2,500, old man, he sneered. Pay your rent. My daughter Maya just nodded, her arms crossed. Pay the rent or get out, Dad. She finally screamed, her voice echoing in the house I built. I just looked at them. Then I nodded slowly, went upstairs, grabbed my bag, and left. They didn't know the house was always mine. They didn't know I owned the entire building, and they certainly didn't know I had just secretly sold it out from under them for $940,000. When the new owner started the eviction, she called me screaming in panic. My reply, it left her speechless. Before I continue this story, I want to know where you all are watching from. Let me know in the comments below. And please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you believe that respect for your elders is non-negotiable. The linoleum in my kitchen was old, but I kept it clean. Clara always liked a clean floor. I was wiping up a small coffee spill near the sink when the front door slammed open, rattling the old door frame. I didn't even have to turn around. That kind of angry entrance only ever meant one person. Greg. My son-in-law, Greg Peterson, walked into my kitchen like he already owned it. He was a small man physically, but he carried himself with an unearned arrogance, the kind that only comes from tasting a little bit of power and liking it too much. My daughter Maya followed him in. She wouldn't look at me. She just stood by the fridge, her arms crossed, looking at the floor. We're here, Joe, Greg announced. He always called me Joe. Never Dad, never Mr. Evans. Just Joe, like I was some guy he knew from a bar. I turned slowly, the damp cloth still in my hand. I see that, Greg. You're tracking mud onto the floor, he scoffed, a short, ugly sound. Forget the floor, old man. He reached into his cheap blazer pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He didn't hand it to me, he threw it. It skidded across my kitchen counter, wet with coffee, and stopped right in front of me. I looked at the paper. It was a notice typed up to look official, full of legal words he thought would scare me. What's this, bro? I asked, though I already knew. That what? He said, tapping the paper with a manicured finger. Is your final warning. $2,500 a month. That was the agreement. You're 3 months behind. That's $7,500 plus late fees. His voice was cold, rehearsed. He was enjoying this. I looked at Maya. She was still staring at the floor. Maya, I asked, my voice quiet. She flinched. This wasn't my daughter. My daughter was the girl I taught to ride a bike on this very street. The girl who cried when her dog Buster died and who I held for 3 hours straight. This woman was a stranger. My mind went back 5 years to the week after we buried Clara. My Clara. My wife of 45 years. Greg had come over his face, a mask of false sympathy. Joe, you're grieving, he had said, sliding papers in front of me. Let me handle the estate. It's complicated. The best thing for tax purposes is to move the house into Maya's name. It's just a formality. It'll protect the asset for her future. I was numb. I would have signed anything. But I never did sign. Maya, however, believed him. She believed her husband, the lawyer, had helped her father by securing her inheritance. She never questioned it. She never asked to see the deed. She just started seeing this house, my house, as hers. But Greg had lied. The house was never in Clara's name to begin with. It was in mine. It was always in mine, purchased and paid for in 1985, long before Maya even met this vulture. He knew it. And now I knew he was desperate. He's right, Dad, Maya finally said. Her voice was thin, strained. We have plans. Greg is trying to start his own practice. We can't afford to just let you stay here for free anymore. For free, I repeated. I raised you in this house. I paid for your college in this house. When you and Greg got married and were broke, I let you live here in this house for 2 years without charging a dime. Greg let out that laugh again. That's the past, Joe. This is business. You're a tenant. And you're a bad one. You don't pay your rent. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, we know you get your little Social Security check. It's enough to cover a room somewhere. A small room. You don't need all this space. He gestured around my kitchen, the place where Clara and I had danced to Sam Cooke, where I had measured my children's heights on the doorframe. This is a family home, Greg said, his smile turning into a sneer. And you're not really part of Maya's new family. Not in that way. That was the line. The one that cut deeper than the demand for money. I saw Maya flinch again. She knew he had gone too far, but she didn't say anything. Her silence was her agreement. I looked at Greg, then back at Maya. I let the silence stretch out, fill the room, become heavy and suffocating. "So," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "if I don't pay, what happens?" Greg's smile widened. He thought he had won. "We evict you, legally. We'll have the marshals here so fast your head will spin." Maya looked at me, her eyes finally lifting. They were hard. "Dad," she said, and her voice was no longer thin. It was sharp. "Pay the rent, or get out." I stared at her. My daughter, my baby girl, gone. I picked up the damp cloth from the counter. I slowly wiped the spot I had been cleaning. I folded the cloth and placed it neatly by the sink. Then I nodded. Just once. "All right, Maya," I said. "I understand." I walked past them. Greg had a look of smug victory on his face. Maya just looked relieved that the confrontation was over. They thought I was going to my room to cry. They thought I was going to beg. I walked up the stairs, my steps slow and steady. I went into my bedroom. In the back of my closet, a small black duffel bag was waiting. It had been packed for 6 months. I picked it up, walked back down the stairs, and headed for the front door. They were still in the kitchen, already whispering about what they would do with the house. "Wait!" Greg called out, a note of confusion in his voice. "Where are you going?" I opened the front door. "You told me to get out," I said, not looking back. "So I'm getting out." I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me, leaving them in my house stunned into silence. They had no idea what they had just done. They had no idea who they had just evicted. I stood on the sidewalk, the screen door clicking shut behind me. The sound felt final. My small duffel bag was light in my hand. I didn't walk to the bus stop. I didn't even walk to the corner. I stood there on the curb and waited. Exactly 30 seconds later, a black Lincoln Navigator, the kind that looks like a block of polished obsidian, pulled up silently to the curb. The driver, a man named Thomas in a black suit, stepped out. He didn't look surprised to see me here in this modest neighborhood in my old work pants. He simply opened the rear door. "Mr. Evans?" he said, his voice deep and respectful. "Good afternoon. The traffic was light." I nodded. "Thank you, Thomas. Let's go home." Maya and Greg were probably still in the kitchen celebrating, maybe high-fiving. They must have thought I was shuffling off to a homeless shelter or a cheap motel by the highway. I watched my old house, Clara's house, fade in the tinted window. We drove out of Decatur, away from the small brick houses and cracked sidewalks. We drove straight into the heart of Atlanta, into Buckhead, where the buildings are glass and steel and the air smells like new money. Thomas didn't pull into the main hotel entrance of the Four Seasons. He drove us to the private residential garage. The staff there knew me. The concierge nodded. "Welcome home, Mr. Evans. Mr. Lewis is scheduled to arrive at 4. I nodded and walked straight to the private elevator, the one that requires a key, the one that goes straight to the top. The elevator doors opened directly into my living room, the penthouse. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed me the entire Atlanta skyline, a view that cost more than Greg would make in 10 lifetimes. This was my real home, the one Maya had never seen, the one I bought 20 years ago as a quiet investment. I dropped my duffel bag on the Italian marble floor. It looked ridiculous next to the original Jacob Lawrence painting on the wall. My son-in-law thought I was a retired postman. He thought my Social Security check was my only income. He thought I was poor. I let him think that. I let everyone think that. When Clara and I started Evans Holdings LLC 40 years ago, she was the face. She loved the parties, the handshakes, the charity balls. I was the numbers. I stayed in the back room. I read the contracts. I bought the land. When she died 5 years ago, I just stayed in the back room. I owned 6 apartment buildings in Midtown, 2 strip malls in Gwinnett, and this penthouse. I kept the house in Decatur because it was Clara's. It was the last place she was truly happy before the sickness, and I kept my life simple for a reason. I wanted Maya to be grounded. I wanted her to find a good man, not a man who was hunting for an inheritance. I wanted her to value hard work to build something of her own. I didn't want my money to poison her. I see now that in my effort to protect her, I made her weak. I made her simple life a vulnerability. She mistook my simplicity for poverty. She mistook my patience for weakness. And she married a shark who smelled blood in the water. I walked over to the heavy mahogany desk that overlooked the city. I didn't pick up my cell phone. I picked up the dedicated encrypted line that only 3 people have the number to. It rang once. "Lewis?" His voice was sharp. Lewis, it's Joe. It's time. There was a pause. Josiah, are you sure? She screamed at me to get out of my own house. Her husband demanded rent from me. Yes, Lewis, I'm sure. Start the eviction process for the Decatur property, immediately. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said and hung up. Mr. Lewis was a tall, sharp man who dressed better than I did. He was the only person Clara and I trusted with the full picture. He walked into the penthouse, his face grim, carrying a thin leather briefcase. He didn't sit down. Josiah, I'm glad you called, he said, his voice low. It's worse than you thought. It's not just about rent. Your son-in-law is desperate. I waited. I knew Lewis. He didn't waste words. He didn't just ask for rent, Joe. He's actively tried to steal the house. He attempted to secure a $300,000 mortgage against the Decatur property. He tried it at 2 different banks in the last 6 months. I felt the blood drain from my face. How the house is in my name. The title is clean. Lewis opened his briefcase and laid a file on my desk. He's a lawyer, Joe, a sloppy one, but he knows the loopholes. He filed forged paperwork, a fake power of attorney. He even faked your signature on this. He slid a document across the desk. It was a preliminary guardianship petition. My eyes scanned the words. Due to advanced age and senile dementia, mentally incompetent to manage his own affairs, immediate danger to himself. He was trying to have you legally declared insane, Lewis said, his voice full of ice. The banks flagged the forged signature and called me as the listed agent for the LLC. They denied the loans. But he's not just greedy Joe. He's a criminal, and he is cornered. I looked at the document in my hand. Senile dementia. The words pulsed in front of my eyes, black ink on white paper. This was not a greedy kid trying to get a free place to live. This was a criminal. He had forged my signature. He had filed legal documents to have me declared mentally incompetent. He was trying to erase me, to turn me into a non-person, a ghost in my own life so he could sell my house and pay off his debts. The hot anger I felt in the kitchen was gone. It was replaced by something cold, sharp, and absolutely clear. Clara, my late wife, always said I was most dangerous when I got quiet. Greg had just made me very, very quiet. Lewis, I said, my voice perfectly level. Change of plans. Lewis raised an eyebrow. He was the only person I trusted, the man who had managed the quiet side of Evans Holdings for 30 years. Josiah, we are not evicting them. What? But they just threw you out. They are trespassing on your property. They are celebrating. I know, I said. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city. They think they've won. They think the poor senile old man is defeated, wandering the streets looking for a shelter. My son-in-law tried to have me legally erased. You don't just evict a man like that. You don't just win. You have to destroy him. You have to take away everything he thinks he has. And you have to do it while he's smiling, thinking he's the smartest man in the room. I turned back to Lewis. He thinks I'm a pawn in his game. He's about to find out I own the entire board. Lewis's face broke into a slow, appreciative smile. He understood. This was the Joe Evans he knew. What's the play, Josiah? He's desperate, I said, pacing the thick Persian rug. He tried to get a $300,000 loan. Why? He's not buying a boat. He's in trouble. Deep trouble. I want you to run a full financial check. Debts, creditors, gambling. Find out what's chasing him. Consider it done, Lewis said. In the meantime, we do nothing. We let him think he won. He just kicked me out. What's his next move? He'll try to sell the house again. He needs to. He needs that money. Lewis frowned. But the banks have already flagged him. The title is clean and in your name. He can't sell it. Not legally, I said. But he's already committed fraud. He's got the fake guardianship papers. He won't go back to a real bank. He'll go to a shady cash-only buyer. Someone who won't look too closely at the paperwork as long as the price is right. So, what do? We become that buyer, Lewis. We set up a new shell corporation. We will be the answer to his prayers. We let him sell my house. We let him think he's getting away with the perfect crime. We will let him take the money. And the moment that money, my money, hits his account, the moment he signs that fraudulent contract, we have him, not just for trespassing, for felony fraud, for everything. Lewis nodded, a predator's glint in his eye. We let him build his own prison. Exactly, I said. Let him think he's free. While I was sitting in my penthouse, the scene in my old house was exactly as I'd pictured. Greg was popping a bottle of cheap champagne, the kind he bought with Maya's credit card. The cork hit the ceiling, leaving a small mark. To us, he shouted, his eyes manic with victory. To our new beginning, to finally being free. Maya held her glass, but she looked nervous. Greg, I feel bad. He just left. He's 72. He had his little bag. Where is he going to go? Greg put his arm around her, pulling her close. His smile was slick. Baby, don't you worry about him. He's a stubborn old man. He made his choice. This is what he wanted. What do you mean he didn't want this? I yelled at him. No, Maya, think about it. Greg said, his voice turning soft, manipulative, the voice he always used on her. He knows we're the future. He knows we need this house. He knows we deserve it. He just couldn't bring himself to give it to us. So he forced us to take it. It's his way of helping see he's free from the burden of this big old house, and we're free to start our lives. He wants us to have this. Maya looked around the room, her eyes landing on the photos of her and me on the mantel. But to sell it, it's his home. It's where I grew up. It's a stepping stone, Maya, Greg said impatiently. It's an asset. It's how we get to the real house, the one in Buckhead, the one with the pool, the one our kids deserve. He kissed her forehead. I'm handling it. I'm the lawyer. Remember, I'll take care of all the boring paperwork. You just focus on picking out new furniture. We are finally going to be rich, baby. My poor blind daughter. She wanted to believe him. She wanted the dream he was selling. So she smiled a small, weak smile and drank the champagne. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Greg, I trust you. That's my girl, he said, draining his glass. The moment Maya went upstairs to take a bath, Greg's face changed. The loving husband disappeared. The rat emerged. He grabbed his phone and walked into my old study, closing the door. I knew this because I was listening. Lewis had placed listening devices in that house 6 months ago, the day after Greg first mentioned the word rent to Maya. Greg didn't call a major real estate firm. He scrolled deep into his contacts and found a name, Marty Shark. Marty, it's Peterson. Yeah, it's been a while. Listen, that deal we talked about, it's on. The Decatur property, the old man is finally out. He listened, pacing the room, his foot tapping. No, the title is complicated, but I'm the sole executor. I have the papers, full power of attorney. It's clean, don't worry about it. I just need a cash buyer, someone who doesn't ask a lot of questions. He paused. How much, Marty? You know the area. It's prime for gentrification. The land alone is worth $800,000. The house is solid brick. I know it's dated. Look, I'm not greedy. I'll take $950. I almost laughed. My house was worth $1.2 million, but Greg was in a hurry. I heard Marty laugh on the other end. $950 cash for a title that's complicated. You're dreaming. I'll give you $940. That's my final offer. My buyer is solid. Done, Greg said instantly. $940, send me the meeting details. He hung up and pumped his fist in the air. He thought he'd just made almost $1 million. Maya came down in her bathrobe. Who was that, honey? Greg kissed her a liar's kiss. Just the bank, working out the details. Good news. I think I found a buyer. It's a tough market, but I think I can get us $400,000 for this place. Maya's eyes went wide. $400,000, oh my God. Greg, that's amazing. We'll be rich. I told you, baby, he said, holding her tight. I'll take care of everything. I clicked stop on the recording. He's lying to her, I said to Lewis. He's going to steal $500,000 from his own wife. Lewis just shook his head. He's not just a criminal, Josiah. He's an idiot. He doesn't know who he's dealing with. No, he doesn't, I said. Lewis set up the company. Get the cash. We're going to buy my house back. I leaned back in my chair in the penthouse, the Atlanta skyline stretching out before me, a kingdom of glass and light. Northside Atlanta Properties, LLC, I said, tasting the name. It sounded solid, anonymous, perfect. Lewis was fast. By the next morning, the LLC was a fully registered, legally formed entity funded with $1 million transferred from one of my main holding accounts. It was a ghost created for one purpose: to buy my own house. Greg won't suspect a thing, Lewis said over coffee. He had come to the penthouse to finalize the plan. The LLC lists a management firm in Delaware as its director. It's completely untraceable. He took a sip of his coffee. And I have the buyer. Who? I asked. A man named Allen. He's one of my best investigators, ex-FBI. He looks like old money and sounds bored by everything. He's the perfect cash buyer. He won't spook Greg. He'll just look impatient, which will make Greg rush. Good, I said. The cold, sharp feeling was back. Let him rush. Let him run right into it. We didn't have to wait long. Greg's shark friend Marty set up the meeting for the very next day, a Thursday. They were meeting at a title agency in Midtown, a neutral location. Of course, Lewis owned the title agency too, through another holding company. The entire staff, the computers, the woman at the front desk. All part of the trap. Greg was a mouse walking into a maze he thought he had built. I wasn't there physically, but I was present. Lewis had the entire conference room wired for audio and video. I sat in my study at the penthouse watching a live feed on a large monitor. It felt like watching a very sad, very predictable movie. Greg walked in first. He was wearing a new suit, a flashy sharkskin gray thing I had never seen. He was trying to look like a man who handled million-dollar deals every day. He looked like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. Then, Mr. Allen, Lewis's man, walked in. He was perfect. He wore an expensive linen shirt, no tie, and an impatient look. He looked like he had just stepped off a yacht. He didn't even look at Greg. He just sat down and tapped his fingers on the table. Greg was nervous. I could see a small bead of sweat on his temple. Mr. Allen, thank you for coming. As you can see, this is a prime property. Allen cut him off. His voice was gravelly bored. Peterson, right. Save the sales pitch. I saw the property. I don't care about the charm, I care about the title. Is it clean, or are we wasting time? Greg laughed, that high-pitched, nervous laugh I hated. Oh, it's clean. Absolutely. As I explained to Marty, I am the sole executor. I have full power of attorney. My father-in-law, sadly, his mind is just... It's not what it used to be. He's in a facility. I am managing all his affairs. I watched him say it. I watched him lie, defaming me, erasing me, painting me as a senile old fool. So he's incompetent? Allen asked, getting straight to the point. Legally, yes, Greg lied. The court has appointed me fiduciary. I have the signed guardianship papers right here filed and stamped. He reached into his briefcase. And there it was. The forged document. The one he had tried to use at the bank. He slid it across the table. That was it. That was the moment. The act of presenting that forged document in the commission of a sale was the felony. Lewis, sitting in the next room, just nodded once at his own hidden camera. Allen barely glanced at it. Whatever, as long as the title company clears it. The title agent, another one of Lewis's employees, a very professional-looking woman, came in. Gentlemen, the paperwork is ready for signatures. Mr. Peterson, as you are the seller acting as fiduciary for Josiah Evans, you will sign here, here, and here. And Mr. Allen, as the purchasing agent for Northside LLC, you will sign here. I watched the monitor. I watched Greg pick up the pen. He had this little smile on his face, a smile of pure, stupid arrogance. He thought he was a genius. He thought he was pulling off the biggest score of his life. He signed his name with a flourish, selling my $1.2 million house for $940,000. The title agent was very efficient. The wire transfer for $940,000 has been initiated to the escrow account you provided, Mr. Peterson. You should see it clear by end of day. Greg practically ran out of the office. He didn't even wait for the elevator. I watched him on my monitor as he got into his car, his hands shaking. He didn't drive home. He sat in the parking garage, pulled out his laptop, and tethered it to his phone. He couldn't wait. We watched thanks to the software Lewis had on his devices as he logged into the escrow account. The money was there, $940,000. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even take a breath. He immediately made a transfer, not to his and Maya's joint account, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Amount $200,000. He paid his bookie. Then he made another transfer, $50,000, to another account, then another, $30,000. He was paying off his debts one by one within minutes of the sale. After he had skimmed $280,000 off the top, he transferred $400,000 into his joint checking account with Maya. The rest, about $260,000, he left in the escrow account, probably to move later. Then he called Maya. I heard her voice bright and hopeful. "Greg, did it work? Did we sell the house?" "It's done, baby," he yelled. $400,000. It's in our account right now. We're rich." I heard her scream with joy. "Oh my God. Greg, you did it. You're amazing." "I told you I'd take care of you," he said, his voice dripping with false pride. "But listen, baby, the bank is a little weird about such a large transfer. They've put a procedural hold on the funds, just for a few days, so don't try to spend anything yet, but it's there. We're safe." He was lying to her. He was lying to everyone. I turned off the monitor. I couldn't watch anymore. The image of my daughter celebrating, thanking the very man who was destroying her life was too much to bear. The private line on my desk rang. It was Lewis from the room next door to where Greg had just signed his life away. His voice was calm, professional, and utterly final. "We got him, Josiah." "I know, Lewis. I saw it all." He presented the forged guardianship documents to facilitate a sale. He signed the contract as a false fiduciary. He accepted the payment, and then he immediately moved the funds across state lines to pay off illegal gambling debts. That's not just fraud. That's wire fraud. He's looking at 20 years in a federal prison. I took a deep breath. Good, let him. He thinks the money is on hold for a few days. "Yes," Lewis said. "Give him 1 week," I said. "Let him have 1 week of thinking he's the king of the world. Let him sleep well for 7 nights. Then on the 8th day, send in the marshals." I gave Greg 7 days. 7 days to live like a king. For 2 weeks he was the man he always wanted to be. I knew because I had Lewis track his new expenses. The first thing he did was buy a $2,000 watch. Then he started taking Maya to restaurants I knew they couldn't afford paying in cash. He was arrogant. He was loud. He was, for the first time in his life, a winner. Maya was anxious. She kept asking him about the money. "Honey," she'd ask, her voice captured on the still active listening devices, "when is the bank going to release the hold on the $400,000? My credit card bill is due." Greg would laugh, that slick, condescending laugh. "Baby, relax. Big money moves slow. It's procedural. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. I know how these things work. Now, which color BMW should we get, blue or black?" He had paid off his gambling debts. He had $260,000 still sitting in that offshore account. He had $400,000 in the joint account that he told Maya was frozen. He felt untouchable. He felt like a god. Then came the 8th day, a Friday. I was in the penthouse reading the Wall Street Journal when Lewis sent me a simple text message. "They're on their way." Back in Decatur at my old house, Maya was in the living room surrounded by interior design magazines picking out furniture for the Buckhead mansion Greg had promised her. Greg was on my porch, smoking an expensive cigar he couldn't have afforded 2 weeks ago. A dark blue county vehicle pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a police car. It was a Fulton County Marshal's car. 2 officers in official windbreakers got out holding a clipboard. Greg squinted at them, annoyed. He thought they were salesmen or maybe someone looking for me. He took a long, arrogant puff of his cigar. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The lead marshal, a tall man who looked like he had 0 patience, didn't smile. "Are you Gregory Peterson?" Greg's arrogance faltered just a little. "I am. What's this regarding?" "Sir, we have a writ of possession for this property," Greg laughed, a short, nervous bark. "A writ of—" "What you mean, an eviction for who, the old tenant Joe Evans?" He waved his cigar dismissively. "He's gone. Left 2 weeks ago. He's not my problem. We own this house." The marshal looked at his paper, then back at Greg. His voice was flat. "No, sir. The writ of possession is for you and for anyone else residing at this address." The cigar smoke stalled in the air. That's absurd. That's impossible. This house belongs to my wife, Maya Peterson." Maya heard the voices and came to the door, the magazine still in her hand. "Greg, honey, what's wrong?" The marshal looked past Greg to Maya, then back again. "Ma'am, according to the deed filed with the county on October 28th, this property was legally sold by its fiduciary Mr. Gregory Peterson to the new owners." He put on his glasses to read the file. "Northside Atlanta Properties, LLC. They are the new legal owners. You are currently trespassing. We are serving you this 7-day notice to vacate the premises." Maya's magazine slipped from her fingers. "Northside? What, Greg? What is he talking about? Fiduciary sold. I thought the money was on hold. You said 400,000. Greg's face was the color of ash. This is a mistake, he yelled, his voice suddenly high-pitched. This is fraud. Someone stole my identity. I am a lawyer. I know my rights. The marshal was completely unmoved. He had seen this 1,000 times. That's a civil matter, sir. You'll have to take that up with your lawyers. Our job is to serve the notice. He tore the sheet from his clipboard and taped the bright fluorescent orange notice right onto my old front door. 7 days, sir. Have a good day. The marshals got back in their car and drove away. Maya and Greg just stood there staring at the orange paper. Then Maya turned on him. Greg, what was that? What is Northside Properties? You said the bank. You said 400,000. Gee, it's a mistake. It's a clerical error. That's all. Greg was hyperventilating, scrambling for his phone. Marty. I'll call Marty. That damn Sharky must have messed up the paperwork. He'll fix this. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely unlock his phone. He scrolled to Mart I Shark. He pressed call and put the phone to his ear, his eyes wide. I could picture the sound he was hearing, the sound I had Lewis arrange an hour ago. Beep, beep, beep. We're sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. No, Greg whispered. He hung up. He dialed again frantically. The number you have dialed is not in service. He stumbled back, his hands shaking. No. He scrolled through his call log. Alan, the buyer, I'll call Alan. He's a real person. I met him. I'll call him. He dialed the number for Mr. Allen. We're sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Greg Peterson dropped his phone. It clattered onto the porch. He staggered back against the porch railing, his eyes fixed on the orange sticker on the door. He looked at Maya, his face a mask of pure primal terror. It wasn't a mistake. The buyer was a ghost. The title agency was a ghost. Marty was gone. He had been played. He had been surgically, perfectly, and completely played. Greg, Maya screamed, shaking him. You lied to me. Where is the money? Where is the 940,000? What did you do? But Greg wasn't looking at her. He was looking out at the street, his eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with his wife. They knew, he whispered. Who knew? Maya sobbed. Him. Greg whispered, his voice cracking. The old man. It was him. He bought the house. Maya's mind couldn't make the leap. It was impossible. Her father was a poor, senile old man. But then, where did he go? Who was that man in the black Lincoln? She ran inside, shoving past her husband. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking so badly she dropped it, spilling its contents on the floor. She found her phone, her fingers fumbling with the screen. She scrolled past Dad, the number she had been ignoring. She scrolled down, to a number she hadn't dialed in years, a number from a phone I'd had long ago. It was labeled Dad, old number. She hit call, praying it would work, having no idea she was about to call my private line in the penthouse. The encrypted line on my desk, the one I had not heard ring in 5 years, suddenly lit up. The display just showed private caller. I let it ring twice. I took a sip of water, then I pressed the speakerphone button. Hello. The sound that came through the speaker was not a voice. It was a shriek, a raw animal sound of pure terror. Dad! Oh my God! Dad, are you there? I waited. I let her panic fill the room. I'm here, Maya. You're screaming. Dad, you have to help us. You have to come home. There are men here. Marshals. They put a sticker on the door. They said the house is sold. They said we have to get out. We have 7 days. 7 days. She was sobbing, gasping for air, her words tumbling over each other. Greg tried to call the buyers, but the numbers are all disconnected. He says it's a mistake, that someone stole his identity. Dad, please, you have to call the police. You have to tell them it's your house. I looked out the window of the penthouse down at the Atlanta skyline. It was a beautiful, clear day. But Maya, I said, my voice perfectly calm, it's not my house, not anymore. What? What are you talking about? Of course it's your house. No, I said, keeping my voice even. I'm the old tenant. Remember, you and Greg own it. That's what you said. That's what Greg told the marshals. I'm just the old man who was living there for free. I'm not involved. Dad, stop it, she screamed. This isn't a joke. We're going to be homeless. Greg is having a panic attack. I need you to fix this. Call them and tell them it's a mistake. I leaned back in my soft leather chair. Fix what, Maya? I don't live there. I'm not the owner. I'm not the seller. I'm just the burden you two were so worried about. Why are you calling me? Because it's you. It's your house. You have to stop them from taking it. No, Maya, I said. I can't. You see, I'm not in Decatur. I'm not even close. You told me to get out, so I got out. I found another place to live. You and Greg are the owners now. It's your problem. You're the lawyer's wife. I'm sure he can handle it. But he can't, she wailed. He says they were ghosts. He says he thinks he was set up. Set up, I asked. By who? By the poor, senile old man you kicked out onto the street. How could I possibly do something like that? There was a long pause, just her ragged breathing. The gears were turning in her head, but they were grinding slow and full of rust. She couldn't put the pieces together. She couldn't believe her poor old father could be anything but a victim. Dad, what did you do? Her voice was a whisper. Me. I did exactly what you told me to do. I left. I stepped back, and I watched your husband, the brilliant lawyer, take his next step. The step he was planning all along. What are you talking about, his plan? You really didn't know, did you? I almost felt a twinge of pity for her. Almost. Maya, Greg didn't tell you the house was in your name. He lied to you. He lied to you 5 years ago when Clara died. He never filed any papers to transfer the deed. He couldn't, because the house was always in my name. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could hear the distant sound of a car horn passing her on the street, probably rattling the windows of my house. No, she whispered. That's not true. He showed me. He said it was for taxes. He lied, I said, cutting her off, my voice like steel. He's been lying to you since the day you met him. He needed you to believe it was your house so you would support him when he kicked me out, so you would feel justified. He used you, Maya. He used you as a shield to get to me. No. Greg loves me. Greg loves money, Maya, and he was desperate. He needed to sell my house. So he forged my signature. He created fake legal documents claiming I was mentally incompetent, claiming he was my legal guardian. He took those fake papers, and he sold my house to the first cash buyer he could find. He sold it, she stammered. But the money, he said 400,000. He said it was frozen. I let out a short, cold laugh, a sound that didn't belong in this beautiful room. 400,000, is that what he told you? Oh, Maya, you really have no idea who you married, do you? What do you mean, babe? The sale price wasn't $400,000, Maya. The sale price was $940,000, cash. 900. She couldn't even say the number. But where is it? Who bought it? He already spent almost $300,000 of it paying off his gambling debts, Maya. Debts he never told you about. He was going to steal $500,000 from you, his own wife, after he stole the house from me. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, who bought it? Who has the house? Who did he sell it to? I leaned forward in my chair. I wanted to be sure the speakerphone picked up every single word. He sold it to a company called Northside Atlanta Properties, Maya, a very private LLC, a company that I happen to own. The line went dead. Not a whisper, not a sob, just silence. She had hung up, or maybe she had just dropped the phone. That's right, Maya, I said to the empty room. I bought my own house. I have the money. I have the deed. And I am the one evicting you. I hung up the phone. I looked at the clock. They had 7 days, 6 days, 23 hours, and about 59 minutes left. I wasn't in the house when the second act of this tragedy began, but I heard it. I heard it all. Lewis had made sure the listening devices were top of the line. I heard the sound of the phone dropping onto the hardwood floor. I heard Greg, still on the porch, stammer, Maya, baby, what is it? What did he say? He walked inside. He saw Maya, pale as a sheet, staring at the phone on the floor. Maya, he's lying. He's a crazy old man. He's trying to scare us. She didn't look at him. She just whispered, $940,000. He's lying, Greg shouted, his voice cracking. It was 400. The contract. Where is the contract, Greg? Her voice was dead. flat. Show me. Show me the contract you signed. It's with the title company. They keep the originals, baby. You know that he's playing a game. A game, she repeated. She walked like a sleepwalker past him toward my old study, the room he had taken over as his home office. Maya, what are you doing? Don't. We need to stick together on this. He grabbed her arm. She ripped her arm away from him, her eyes flashing with a cold fire I had never seen in her. Don't you touch me, she hissed. She went straight to his desk. She started pulling open drawers. Maya, stop, that's my private client information. You can't. Where is it, Greg? She screamed, throwing files onto the floor. Where is the money? Where are the bank statements? You said it was frozen. So show me the frozen account. It's online. It's all digital. I can't. She wasn't listening. She went to his briefcase, the one he always kept locked. She didn't ask for the code. She walked to the fireplace, grabbed the heavy iron poker, and smashed the lock. Once. Twice. The lock broke. Maya! He screamed, part rage, part terror. She dumped the contents onto the floor, papers scattered everywhere, and there, in a simple white envelope, was a bank statement. A statement for an account Maya had never seen. An account at a bank in the Cayman Islands. She unfolded it. Her hands were shaking. She read the first line. Account balance $260,000. She looked at him. Greg, what is this? It's a savings plan, baby. For us, for our future. It's complicated. She kept reading. She saw the recent transaction history. She saw the deposit, $940,000, and right below it, the outgoing transfers. Greg, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is Bovada? What is this $200,000 payment? What is Win Las Vegas wire transfer? $50,000. Greg, what is this? He didn't answer. He just sagged against the wall, his face white, his new expensive suit suddenly looking cheap and oversized. It's gambling, isn't it? She said. The poker was still in her hand. You're a gambler. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his head in his hands. It was a bad beat, he whimpered. Just a bad beat. I had a sure thing. I was going to double it. I was going to win it all back. I was going to put it all in our account. Maya, I swear I was going to surprise you. She looked at him, this pathetic, whimpering creature on the floor of her father's study. You sold my father's house to pay for gambling. He owed me. The old man owed me. For all the years I put up with him, for all the years I took care of you. Maya just dropped the bank statement. She backed out of the room. She walked to the kitchen, found her phone, and dialed my number again. I answered on the first ring. This time, it wasn't a scream. It was a sob. A deep, agonizing sound that came from the very bottom of her soul. Dad? Oh my God, Dad! I'm here, Maya. It's all true. It's worse. He's a gambler, Dad. He's a degenerate. He lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. He paid a casino, Dad. He paid a casino with your house. She was choking on the words. He's not the man I married. He's a monster. He's been lying to me. He's been lying about everything. He's in debt. He's ruined us. He ruined me. I let her cry. I let her feel the full weight of the truth she had refused to see for 10 years. The truth her mother Clara had seen the first day she met him. He didn't just ruin you, Maya, I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. He ruined everyone he touched. What do you mean? I know all about his debts, Maya. I know about the $150,000 he owed the bookies. I know why he was so desperate to sell the house. How could you possibly know that? Because Louis and I have been investigating your husband for the last 6 months, Maya. Ever since he first tried to get that fake power of attorney. The gambling debts. That's not even his biggest problem today. There was a sniffle on the other end. What's worse than that? I took a sip of my water. The $80,000 he embezzled from his own law firm, Maya. The money he stole from the partner's trust account. The account for the Wilson estate. The what? A fund for 2 orphaned children, Maya. He stole from orphans. I made a phone call this morning, just before the marshals arrived. I called the senior partners at his firm. I told them to check the books for that specific account. I told them their junior partner, the man who just sold $1 million house for cash, was a common thief. I didn't have to imagine the next part. Lewis had an investigator stationed in the lobby of Greg's firm downtown. Greg Peterson, still pale and sweating from his confrontation with Maya, burst through the doors of his law firm. He was probably planning to access his accounts to move the rest of the money to Run. He jammed his keycard into the elevator slot. It beeped. Red light. Access denied. He tried again. Red light. Gregory. He froze. He turned around. Mr. Abernathy, the senior partner, was standing in the lobby. With him were two men in dark suits I knew were off-duty police officers working security. "Mr. Abernathy," Greg stammered. "My card, it's not working." Abernathy didn't smile. His face was like granite. "We need to talk, Gregory. In the main conference room, now. Leave your briefcase and your phone with security." Greg looked at the security guards. He looked at Abernathy's cold, dead eyes. He knew. It was over. Every single string he had been juggling had just been cut, all at once. 7 days. That's what the law requires. 7 days for a tenant to vacate. I gave them 2 weeks, but Greg and Maya, in their panic and arrogance, must have tried to file a countersuit. It was dismissed immediately, of course. The forged documents, the wire fraud. They had no legal standing. So today was the day. It was gray and cold for an Atlanta morning. A damp chill was in the air. I had Lewis arrange for the marshals to arrive at 9 a.m. sharp. When I arrived, they were already halfway done. It was a brutal, impersonal process. 2 heavy-set men in Fulton County windbreakers carrying out furniture. Not my furniture, their furniture. The cheap particle board shelves Greg had bought. The oversized beige sectional sofa Maya thought was so fashionable. They carried it all out and placed it on the front lawn right on the wet grass. It was a yard sale of a ruined life. Maya was there. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was sitting on the curb, the exact spot where I had waited for my car 2 weeks ago. She was wearing the same clothes she'd had on 2 days ago. Her hair matted her face, pale and puffy from crying. She was just watching her life being dismantled. A sofa, a flat-screen TV, boxes of kitchen supplies, a lamp. It all looked so cheap, so pathetic sitting out there on the lawn. She had nothing. Greg was in a holding cell downtown. Denied bail. The embezzlement charge from his firm was the least of his worries. The federal wire fraud charges were what held him. He couldn't help her. His parents, I'd heard, weren't taking her calls. She was completely, utterly alone. She was exactly where her greed had put her. She looked up as my car approached. She probably thought it was another reporter. The story of Greg's arrest, the embezzling lawyer, had hit the local news. But it wasn't a news van. It was a 2025 Rolls-Royce Spectre. Deep midnight blue, silent as a ghost. It didn't rumble. It hummed. It pulled to a silent stop on the street right next to her pile of belongings. Maya shielded her eyes, confused. She didn't know anyone who owned a car like this. The back door opened. My left shoe hit the pavement. A $5,000 hand-stitched black leather Loro Piana shoe. I stepped out. I wasn't wearing my old work pants and a flannel shirt. I was wearing a charcoal gray, custom-tailored suit. I adjusted my cuffs, the gold of my Patek Philippe watch catching the weak morning light. I was not the man she had evicted. I was not the man she had called a burden. Mr. Lewis stepped out of the passenger side, equally immaculate, holding his leather briefcase. He walked around the car to stand beside me. I looked at the scene, the marshals, the furniture, my daughter sitting on the curb like a refugee. I felt nothing, just a cold final sense of resolution. Maya stood up. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, at the car, at Lewis, then back at me. Her brain was trying to connect 2 images that did not belong together. The poor, senile old man, and the man standing in front of her. "Dad," her voice was a cracked whisper. What is this? Whose car is this? Why are you dressed like that?" "It's my car." "Maya," I said. My voice was calm, clear, carrying in the morning air. "I've had it for a year. I just keep it at the penthouse garage." The penthouse," she stammered. "Yes, the one at the Four Seasons, where I've been living since you kicked me out of my house." I don't understand." She whispered, her eyes wide with a terror that was deeper than just being homeless. It was the terror of reality itself shifting beneath her feet. "I know you don't," I said. "You never did. You saw a simple old man. You saw a small house. You saw a target. You never bothered to look deeper. You never bothered to ask a single question about me, about your mother, about our lives." I took a step closer. The marshals paused their work watching us. "Your mother and I, we didn't just work Maya, we built. Evans Holdings, LLC, the company I founded the year you were born, the company that owns this." I gestured to Lewis. Lewis stepped forward and opened his briefcase. "Miss Evans," he said, his voice void of all emotion, "your father's portfolio includes 6 multifamily apartment complexes in Midtown, 2 commercial retail centers in Gwinnett County, a majority stake in a logistics firm at the port, and the penthouse residence at the Four Seasons. Total estimated value, $84 million. Maya just shook her head as if she could deny the words. No. You worked at the post office." "That was a lie I told you when you were 10, I said. "A lie I told to protect you. I wanted you to grow up normal. I wanted you to be humble. I wanted you to value hard work, not inheritance. Your mother, Clara, she was afraid our money would make you soft. She was afraid it would attract men like Greg Peterson." I paused. It seemed she was right to be afraid. I kept that house in Decatur for her. I stayed there living simply for you, to teach you value, to see if you could build something of your own without my money turning you into, well, into what you became. But you got soft anyway. You married a weak, greedy man. You looked at my humility and you called it poverty. You looked at my patience and you called it weakness. I looked her dead in the eyes. The final marshal walked out of the house, locking the door with a new key. He handed the key to Lewis, who placed it in his briefcase. "You stood in my kitchen, Maya. My kitchen, in the house I paid for. And you screamed at me. Pay the rent or get out. You made your choice. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I did exactly what you said. I got out." I gestured to the pile of furniture on the wet grass. "And now, you're on the street." She shivered, the damp morning cold seeping through her thin clothes. I watched her. She had been humiliated. She had been exposed. She was now officially homeless. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling so badly she could barely unlock it. I saw her tap the Uber app. She stared at the screen, her face contorted in confusion, then panic. Payment method declined. She frantically typed, trying another card. Declined. She tried a third. Declined. She started breathing fast, hyperventilating. She scrolled through her contacts and tried to call a hotel, probably one of the expensive ones she and Greg liked. "A room?" "Yes, Peterson. Maya Peterson." Her voice was desperate. "What do you mean the card isn't—" "No. Run it again. It's a joint account with my husband. It's fine." I knew what the concierge on the other end was telling her. The accounts were not fine. They were frozen. She threw her phone onto the sofa that sat awkwardly on the grass. It bounced onto a cushion. She looked at her purse, desperate, then at me. Mr. Lewis, who had been standing silently by the Rolls-Royce, stepped forward. He walked past me across the lawn until he was standing over her. His shadow fell across her as she sat on the curb. "Miss Evans," he said. His voice was not kind. It was not cruel. It was the voice of pure cold law. "I believe I can save you some time." She looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen, lost. Who are you?" "My name is Mr. Lewis. I am Mr. Evans's legal counsel." He gestured to her phone. "I'm afraid your payment methods will not work. Not today, not tomorrow, and perhaps not for a very long time." "It's you!" she shrieked, scrambling to her feet and pointing at me. "You did this. You froze my accounts. That's my money. That's Greg's money. You can't just take my money." Lewis's voice cut through her hysteria like a razor. "There is no Greg's money, Miss Evans. There's only stolen money. And as you were married and the accounts were joint, your name is now inextricably linked to several ongoing federal investigations." Her face went blank. "What? No, I didn't do anything. He's the one who—" You were complicit in his attempt to sell a property that was not yours. Lewis continued, his voice like a judge reading a sentence. Your name is on the joint account where he deposited $400,000 obtained through wire fraud. And most importantly, your name is on the fraudulent guardianship petition he filed against your father, claiming he was mentally incompetent. In the eyes of the law, Miss Evans, you are not a victim. You are an accomplice. The word accomplice hit her. It was a physical blow. She staggered back. She looked at her hands as if she could see cuffs on them, then at me. The fight evaporated. The arrogance, the anger, all of it just drained away. She crumpled. She scrambled across the lawn, stumbling on the uneven grass, and grabbed the lapels of my suit. Her hands were dirty from the curb. Dad, please, she sobbed, her voice breaking. Please, you can't do this. I have nothing. He took everything. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. Please, Dad. I'm your daughter. I'm your daughter. You can't just leave me on the street. Please. She was begging. The same woman who had screamed, "Get out!" was now begging to be let back in. I looked down at her hands on my suit. They were trembling. I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. I didn't pat her head. I just looked at her, my face like stone. Slowly, deliberately, I reached up and peeled her fingers off my lapel one by one. I brushed the spot she had touched as if brushing off a piece of lint. You're right, I said. You have nothing. But that's not entirely true. She looked up, confused, tears and snot streaming down her face. What? I pointed to her left hand. You still have that. The ring. The one you were always so proud of. What did you tell me it was 3 carats flawless? She looked down at her engagement ring. The diamond caught the gray morning light. A flicker of hope crossed her face. She could sell it. It was worth thousands. You know, Maya, I said, my voice quiet. I never understood that ring. Greg was broke when he met you. He was a junior associate making $60,000 a year. How could he afford a $50,000 ring? She stammered. He said it was family money, an inheritance from his grandmother. Greg's grandmother died with nothing but debt, Maya. He didn't have any family money, but his law firm did. Do you remember when I told you he stole $80,000 from the Wilson estate, the trust fund for the orphans? She stared at me, her eyes wide, unblinking. She wasn't breathing. He stole that $80,000 before he proposed to you, Maya. That wasn't a recent development. That was his buy-in. That's how he convinced you he was a man of means. I let the silence hang in the cold air. I let her connect the two facts. You're not wearing a symbol of his love, Maya, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You're wearing the Wilson Children's College Fund on your finger. You're wearing stolen money. You're wearing blood money from orphans. She looked at the ring on her hand as if it were a spider. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. She tried to pull it off her fingers, fumbling, scratching at her own skin. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. He would. He did. And you've been flashing it at everyone for 10 years, telling them how much he loved you. She finally ripped the ring off her finger. It tore a small piece of skin with it. She looked at it, this glittering, cursed object. She screamed a short, choked sound and threw it. The ring flew across the pavement and disappeared into the gutter drain. And then she doubled over right there on the sidewalk and was violently, horribly sick all over the wet grass. She collapsed onto her knees, sobbing, heaving, having truly finally lost every single thing she thought defined her. I watched her. I just stood there and watched my daughter, my only child, kneeling in the damp, cold grass, retching until there was nothing left to come up. She was broken, utterly and completely. The marshals had finished their work. The last of her cheap, flashy furniture was sitting on the lawn, a pathetic monument to a life built on lies. The truck pulled away from the curb. The show was over. Lewis stood beside me, silent, impassive. He knew this part was mine. Maya was sobbing now, but they were the dry, racking sobs of someone who has nothing left. She had lost her husband. She had lost her fantasy of $1 million payday. She had lost her home. And she had just lost the last shred of dignity she had by throwing that stolen ring into the gutter. The punishment was absolute. There was nothing left to take from her. Greg had hollowed her out, and I had simply shattered the empty shell. She was my blood. But she was not Clara's daughter. Not yet. Clara was a fighter, a builder. Maya was just a wreck. But broken things can be remade, or they can be thrown away. I had not decided which. I let her kneel there for another full minute. The cold air was sharp. She shivered, wiping her mouth with the back of her dirty sleeve. I reached into the inner breast pocket of my suit. I didn't pull out my wallet. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a single, simple brass key on a plain steel ring. Lewis glanced at me, just a flicker of his eyes. He recognized it. It was a unit key for the Spring Street complex. He nodded once, understanding the play. I didn't walk over to her. I didn't crouch down and put a comforting hand on her back. I didn't hold her. I stood 5 feet away from where she knelt. I tossed the key. It made a small, dull thud as it landed on the wet grass right next to a cardboard box labeled shoes. She flinched at the sound. Her eyes, red and swollen, blurry with tears, tried to focus on it. She looked at the key. Then she looked at me. Her mind, shattered and confused, couldn't process this new piece of information. "What?" she whispered, her voice raw and torn. "What is that? Is this more humiliation? Are you giving me the key to the house you just locked?" "You will not be on the street," I said. My voice was flat. There was no warmth in it. There was no pity. It was a statement of fact. "That key opens apartment 3B, 1450 Spring Street. It's one of my buildings on the south side." Her eyes widened just a fraction. A tiny, desperate spark of hope. An apartment? You mean you'll let me?" "It's a studio," I said, cutting off that hope before it could grow. 400 square feet. A single room, a small galley kitchen, 1 bathroom. It's clean. It's safe. It is empty. She started to cry again, but this time it was a different sound. It was the weak, gasping sound of relief. "Oh, Dad. Dad, thank you. Thank you. I'll pay you back. I promise. I raised one hand. "I am not finished." She went silent. "I am not giving you the apartment, Maya. I am renting it to you. I have already paid your first 3 months' rent and the security deposit. Consider that your severance package from this family. After 90 days, rent is due on the 1st of the month, $600. No exceptions, no delays. You will be a tenant in my building, and I am a landlord, not a charity. You miss a payment, you will be evicted, just like today." Her face, which had lifted for a moment, collapsed. But Dad, I have nothing. You saw what Lewis did. My accounts are frozen. I have no money. How can I?" "You will get a job," I said. The words were as hard and cold as the concrete curb she was sitting next to. "What, a job, Maya? A real job, not image consultant, not helping Greg manage his practice. A job that gives you a W-2, a job with a paycheck. You will work as a cashier at a grocery store. You will wait tables. You will sweep floors. You will do whatever it is you have to do to earn $600 a month. You will learn what your mother and I did. You will learn what it means to earn your own survival." She stared at the key. Then she stared at me. Her mind was grappling with the cold, harsh reality of the lifeline I had offered. It was not a rescue. It was a sentence. A sentence to a life of hard labor she had always believed with every fiber of her being that she was above. I don't know if I can," she whispered. The last of her fight was gone. "Then you'd better learn fast," I said, "because this is it. This is the last thing I will ever give you for free. The next move is yours." I turned my back on her. I didn't wait for an answer. I didn't wait for a thank you. I didn't help her pick up her boxes. I didn't offer her a ride. I walked back to the silent, waiting Rolls-Royce. Lewis was already holding the door open for me. I got in, sinking into the soft leather. I didn't look back. As the car pulled away, the window gliding up with a silent hiss, I glanced in the side mirror. The last thing I saw was my daughter Maya Peterson, 40 years old, kneeling on the wet grass of my front lawn, surrounded by the cheap, ruined furniture of her old life, staring at a single brass key. She was finally truly on her own. 6 months, half a year can feel like a lifetime, or it can pass in the blink of an eye. For me, it was a blur of meetings, spreadsheets, and the quiet satisfaction of managing my empire. For Greg Peterson, my son-in-law, it was the end of the world. The federal case against him was open and shut. Lewis had presented the U.S. Attorney's Office with a gift-wrapped case, forged legal documents, wire fraud embezzlement, and the signed fraudulent bill of sale for my house. The state of Georgia added its own charges for the attempted guardianship fraud. Greg, the man who thought he was a genius, the man who thought he was smarter than the senile old man, took a plea deal. He couldn't risk a trial. He knew about the recordings. He knew what Maya knew. He was sentenced to 7 years in a federal white-collar prison. 7 years. He was 41 years old. By the time he gets out, he'll be nearly 50, a disbarred felon with nothing to his name. His life is over. I didn't even attend the sentencing. He was no longer my concern. My concern was Maya. For 6 months, I had done nothing. I honored my side of the agreement. The 3 months of prepaid rent in that Southside studio came and went. 90 days. Then the first rent check was due. I sat in the penthouse in my weekly meeting with Lewis. The morning sun streamed in. "All right, Lewis," I said, steepling my fingers. "It's time. What's the report on apartment 3B? I expected one of two things. One, that she had missed the payment and was already being evicted by the building manager. Or two, that she had found another man, another fool to latch onto, and had moved out. Lewis looked down at his report, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. "She paid Josiah." I paused. "She paid how? She's not working." "That's where you're wrong," Lewis said. He slid a surveillance photo across the desk. It wasn't a good photo. It was grainy, taken from a car. But it was her, my daughter. She was wearing a black apron with a small embroidered logo on it. Her hair was tied up in a hairnet. She was handing a cup of coffee to someone through a drive-through window. She has a job. She has had a job for 5 months, Lewis confirmed. Started 2 weeks after you left her on the curb. She's a barista at a place called Grindhouse Coffee on Spring Street, not far from her apartment. Full-time, $7 an hour minimum wage plus tips. I stared at the photo. The woman in this picture was not the woman I knew. The woman I knew wore designer knockoffs, got manicures, and thought work was updating her social media. This woman looked tired. She looked thin. She paid the $600, Lewis continued, on the first of the month, for the last 3 months, in full, by money order. She takes the bus to work at 5:30 every morning. She works the opening shift. She comes home. Most nights she doesn't go out. Her lights are off by 9 p.m. I was silent. 5 months of getting up before dawn. 5 months of serving coffee to strangers. 5 months of living on minimum wage. She hadn't called. She hadn't begged. She hadn't folded. I looked at the photo again. She's actually doing it. It appears so, Lewis said. She's learning what it means to work. I handed the photo back to Lewis. "Thank you, that's all for today." He nodded and left me alone. I stood at the window looking down at the city. My daughter, a barista. I didn't know whether to feel proud or disgusted. Maybe both. But I knew one thing. I had to see it for myself. The next day I didn't take the rolls. I didn't wear the suit. I went to my private garage and got in the car I used for Postman Joe, a 10-year-old Ford sedan. I put on my old flannel shirt, my worn jeans, my scuffed work boots. I drove to the South Side. Grindhouse Coffee was exactly what it sounded like. A small, independent shop wedged between a laundromat and a check-cashing place. The bell on the door jingled as I walked in. It was busy, loud, the smell of burnt coffee and sweet syrup thick in the air. And there she was. She was behind the counter, moving fast. "Large mocha light whip," she yelled to another employee. She was wiping down the espresso machine, her movements quick practiced. She was wearing the black apron and the hairnet. She didn't look up. She was just a blur of stressed efficiency. I got in line. There were 3 people in front of me. I watched her. She didn't smile at the customers. She just took their orders, took their money, and moved them along. This was not a career. This was survival. Then it was my turn. "Welcome to Grindhouse. What can I—" She started her head down, punching numbers into the register. She looked up. She froze. The color drained from her face. I saw her hand, the one holding a pen, begin to shake. The customer behind me sighed impatiently. "Maya," I said, my voice quiet. What are you doing here?" she whispered. Her eyes darted around, terrified someone would see me, would connect her to this old, poor-looking man. "I'm here for a coffee," I said. We're busy," she stammered, looking at the line behind me. "I can wait," she swallowed. Her training kicked in. She stared at the register. What will you have?" Just a black coffee. Small. She punched the keys. That's $2.50. I pulled a $5 bill from my pocket, my old worn wallet, the one she recognized. I placed it on the counter. Her hands were trembling as she poured the coffee from the urn. She spilled some on the counter. "I'm sorry," she muttered, grabbing a rag. She was embarrassed, not just because I was there, but because Maya Peterson was the one serving coffee. She put the cup in front of me. She opened the register, took my $5, and counted out the change. $2.50. She put it on the counter, avoiding my eyes. I took the coffee. I took the change. I turned to walk away. I paid it. Her voice was low, but it cut through the noise of the shop. I stopped. I turned back to her. "What did you say?" She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red. She was exhausted. But for the first time in her life, they were clear. There was no manipulation. There was no angle. There was just a deep, profound weariness. And something else. A flicker of pride. "The rent," she said, her voice stronger. "It was due yesterday. I paid it. I paid all of it. With my money. From this job, I'm not late." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The daughter I thought I had lost. The woman who had screamed at me, who had sided with a thief, who had valued a fantasy over her own father. She was gone. This person in front of me. This person was new. She had paid her rent, $600. She had earned it $2.50 at a time. This was the first honest thing she had done in 10 years. This was the first seed of Clara I had seen in her since she was a child. I nodded, slowly. "Good," I said. I turned and started to walk out. I got to the door. I stopped, one hand on the handle. Maya. She was still watching me, her expression uncertain, expecting another blow. "Next Tuesday," I said. 10 a.m., Lewis's office, at the penthouse. "What?" "What for?" "Don't be late," I said, and walked out the door, leaving her standing behind the counter, confused, terrified, and for the first time hopeful. "There are some papers you need to see." The elevator ride up to the penthouse was the longest of her life. I knew this because I watched her on the security feed. She walked into the lobby of the Four Seasons private residences, still in her black polo shirt and stained black apron from Grindhouse Coffee. She was clutching her worn-out backpack to her chest like a shield. The concierge, a professional I've known for years, didn't blink. He simply said, "Miss Evans, your father is expecting you." She flinched, not used to being called Miss Evans in a place like this. She got into the private elevator. The 10-second ride to the top must have felt like an hour. She was rising from her new world on the south side, a world of bus stops and minimum wage, into mine, a glass box in the sky. The elevator doors opened directly into the living room. She stood there frozen. Mr. Lewis and I were waiting. We weren't in suits. We were in business casual. We looked simply like men who belonged here. Maya looked small. She smelled faintly of stale coffee and fear. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the art on the walls, the marble floors, the sweeping view of the Atlanta skyline behind us. She couldn't comprehend it. "You're late," I said. My voice was neutral. It was 10:02 a.m. The bus was slow," she stammered, twisting the strap of her backpack. I had to transfer twice. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis." She wouldn't look at us. She was looking at the Persian rug, a rug that cost more than her annual salary at the coffee shop. "Sit down, Maya," Lewis said. He gestured to a sleek, modern chair. It was not a comfortable-looking chair. It was a chair for business. She sat on the absolute edge of it, still clutching her backpack. Lewis opened a thin, elegant leather folder. "Maya, your father has called you here today to discuss a matter pertaining to your mother, Clara Evans." At the mention of her mother's name, Maya's head snapped up. "Mom, what? What does she have to do with this?" "Your mother was a brilliant woman, Maya," I said, speaking for the first time since she sat. "She was the heart of Evans Holdings. She was also very perceptive. She saw things. She saw people. She saw your husband Greg the very first day she met him." Maya flinched. "Dad, don't—" "She saw the vulture inside the suit, Maya," I said. "She told me after your engagement party, that man doesn't love her Joe. He loves what he thinks we have. He's a hunter. I thought she was being too harsh. As it turns out, she wasn't being harsh enough. Lewis slid a document across the glass table. Before she passed, your mother established several financial instruments. One of them, the Clara Evans Family Trust, pertains directly to you. I saw a tiny, desperate flicker in Maya's eyes. Money. After 6 months of poverty, she thought she was finally being rescued. She thought this was a handout. However, Lewis continued, and that one word hung in the air, cold and heavy. Your mother attached several very strict non-negotiable conditions to this trust. She was not going to give you a single dollar that your husband could touch. What? What conditions? Maya whispered. The trust, Lewis said, reading from the document, was to remain sealed and inactive until one of two conditions were met. 1, your 45th birthday, or 2, the date you were legally and permanently divorced from Gregory Peterson. Maya gasped. She put her hand over her mouth. She knew he was a parasite, I said flatly. And she would rather her money sit untouched for decades than let him get his hands on it. Your husband's arrest and felony conviction have triggered the second condition. Maya looked like she was going to be sick. So, there's money. I'm not so fast, Lewis said, raising a hand. That was only the first lock. Your mother built a second wall around this trust. She knew Greg, but she also knew you. That hit her. What do you mean she knew me? Clara wasn't just afraid of Greg's greed, Maya. She was afraid of your weakness. She was afraid that unearned money given to you would be a poison. She was afraid you would become, well, exactly what you were 6 months ago, someone who feels entitled to things they didn't earn. I took over. Your mother stipulated, I said, my voice sharp, that the trust would only be unsealed after you met a second set of conditions. And I quote, the trust will activate only when my daughter Maya Evans demonstrates sustained verifiable independent employment for a period of no less than 6 consecutive months. Maya looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Employment? You've been at Grindhouse Coffee for 6 months and 3 weeks, Lewis said, checking a file. You have met the first requirement. Congratulations. But there is a third, and it is the most important. Maya looked terrified, like a student about to hear her final grade. The trust is not a lump sum, Miss Evans. It is not a lottery ticket. Your mother was smarter than that. It is a conditional matching fund. A matching fund I don't understand. It's very simple, Lewis said, his voice precise. Your mother wanted you to learn to work, to save, to build, just as she did. The trust will match dollar for dollar any verified contributions you make to your own personal retirement savings. A 401k, an IRA, any qualified plan. You save $1 from your paycheck. The trust will deposit $1 into your account. You save $5,000 in a year. The trust will match it with $5,000. You save nothing. The trust gives you nothing. Maya was stunned. She was speechless. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't a blank check. This was homework. So, I'm not rich, she whispered. No, I said, standing up and walking to the window. You're not. You're a barista. You will only get what you earn. Your mother's greatest fear was that you would become Greg, someone who schemes and waits for a handout. This was her final lesson to you, Maya. This was her way of protecting you from him. And from yourself. Maya looked down at the documents, her eyes blurring with tears. She knew. She saw all of this. She knew I'd end up here in this stupid uniform. She knew you were weak. I said, my voice a little softer now. She knew you followed, you didn't lead. And she loved you so much that she built this fortress around her legacy. She wouldn't let Greg take it. And she wouldn't let you waste it. $1 for $1, Maya whispered, the math clicking in her head. If I manage to save $10,000 next year, the trust will give you $10,000, Lewis finished. If you save 50, it gives you 50. It is a ladder, Miss Evans. Your mother built you a ladder, but you and only you have to do the climbing. Maya sat there for a long time. The smell of coffee still clung to her. She looked at her hands, her nails short and unpolished, her skin red and chapped from the hot water and cleaning solutions at the shop. She wasn't a princess. She wasn't an heiress. She was a 40-year-old woman in a studio apartment working for minimum wage. But for the first time, she had a path. It wasn't a handout. It wasn't charity. It was a challenge. It was a partnership with her dead mother. She wiped her eyes not on her sleeve, but on a napkin she pulled from her backpack. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She looked up not at me, but at Lewis. How do I start? How do I set up an IRA? Lewis, the man who manages my $84 million empire, gave her a small, rare smile. He slid a second set of forms across the table. I was hoping you would ask that. Let's get to work. For an hour, Lewis walked her through the paperwork. He explained how an IRA worked. He showed her the vesting schedule for the trust. He gave her the contact information for a free financial advisor in one of my buildings, someone who specialized in low-income retirement planning. Maya just sat there, her world, which had collapsed 6 months ago, slowly, painfully beginning to reform. But it was a different shape now. It was not the soft, easy shape she had expected. It was hard. It was all angles and effort. She signed the last paper, her hand still smudged with a little ink from the coffee shop. She pushed the documents back toward Lewis. She finally looked at me, her eyes clear, exhausted, but no longer desperate. She was just processing. So, she said, her voice quiet, this is it. I work, I save, and I get $1. That's it, I confirmed. You get exactly what you earn, nothing more, nothing less. She nodded. She stood up, pulling her cheap backpack onto her shoulder. She looked for a moment like a student leaving the principal's office. She started to walk toward the elevator. Then she stopped. She turned back. There was one last loose thread, one last piece of her old entitled life she needed to account for. The house, she said. The house in Decatur, our old house. What happened to it? You bought it. Northside Properties. You bought it. But are you going to... She couldn't finish the sentence. I knew what she was asking. Was I going to sell it? Was I going to give her the money? After all this, was there still a jackpot waiting for her? Was her reward for 6 months of good behavior going to be a check for $500,000? The old Maya was still in there somewhere, hoping for the easy way out. I looked at her. I needed her to understand that the past was gone, every last piece of it. I sold it, Maya. Her face fell. Oh, you sold it to who? To a developer, a real one this time. They're tearing it down. They're going to build 4 townhouses on the lot. Tearing it down, she whispered. The house where she grew up. Gone. It was just a pile of bricks, Maya. It was tainted. I sold it last month, for its real price, the $940,000, the money your husband was trying to steal from me, the money he was trying to steal from you. I see, she said, looking at the floor. I couldn't keep it. I said, my voice softer but still firm. I walked through it one last time after the marshals had locked the door. I stood in the kitchen where you screamed at me. I stood in my study where he sat forging my name, planning to have me declared insane. I looked at the porch where Clara and I drank lemonade for 40 summers. I paused. Her memory wasn't in that house anymore. You two, you and Greg, you poisoned it. You scrubbed her from the walls with your greed. It was just an asset, so I liquidated it. She looked up, her eyes filled with a new practical question. The question of a person who now understands the value of $1. So, the money, she said. The $940,000. You just kept it. You want to know what I did with the money, Maya? I asked. Are you wondering if you get any of it? Are you hoping there's a trust fund from that too? I let her sit in that uncomfortable silence. I let her see the last flicker of her old self, that greedy, grasping part. She winced and looked away, ashamed. No, I just wondered. I'll tell you what I did with it, I said. The first thing I did, I took $80,000, and I sent a certified check to Mr. Abernathy's law firm. She looked confused. What? Why, Greg, they fired him. Because he stole it from them, I said, my voice sharp. He embezzled it from his partners. It wasn't my money to keep. It wasn't his to steal. It was theirs. I made them whole. That's called integrity, Maya. It's a concept your husband never understood. She nodded, saying nothing. Then, I continued, I took $50,000 and I sent it to the Wilson Estate Trust. Her face went white. She remembered. She remembered the ring she had thrown into the gutter. The orphans fund, Maya. The money Greg used to buy your engagement ring. I couldn't let those children pay the price for his sins. I couldn't let them lose their college fund because my daughter married a thief. So I paid it back. I cleaned his slate. I made sure that the last filthy piece of his betrayal was erased from the world. I undid the damage you two caused. She was silent. She had no words. She was ashamed. She was finally truly ashamed. After a long moment, she whispered, "That's 130,000. What about the rest? The $810,000. I looked at Lewis. He looked at me. He knew what was coming. "The rest, Maya," I said, "is none of your business. It is not your inheritance. It is not your safety net. It is my money, and I have already put it to work." "What? What do you mean?" "I used it to establish the Clara Evans Charitable Fund, a foundation in your mother's name. It has one very specific purpose." "What purpose?" "It provides subsidized safe housing and legal aid for elderly individuals in the Atlanta area who are victims of financial abuse, specifically abuse from their own families." Her jaw dropped. "Turns out," I said, walking to the window, "it's a much bigger problem than I ever realized. Your story, Maya, as ugly as it is not unique. There are hundreds of Gregs out there, and hundreds of Mayas who are too weak or too greedy to stop them, and hundreds of Joes who don't have a penthouse to run to." I turned back to her. The fund's first beneficiary was a woman from East Point, 78 years old. Her son tried to do the exact same thing Greg did. We moved her into one of my buildings last week. Your mother's legacy won't be weakness, Maya. It will be strength. Her memory won't be tainted by what you did. It will be defined by what I am doing now. I let that sink in. The money was gone. The house was gone. The fantasy was gone. All that was left was the key in her pocket to a $600 a month studio apartment and a matching fund trust that would only reward her own hard work. This was her new reality. This was her new life. 1 year later. The world turns and people change, or they are broken by the turning. Greg Peterson sits in a low-security federal prison in Alabama. His 7-year sentence for wire fraud and embezzlement was a harsh reality, but the disbarment for life was the true end. He has no future. He has no wife. He has no money. He is just as I told him, a ghost. I still live in the penthouse. My life is the same as it always was, quiet, managed, and purposeful. Evans Holdings continues to grow, and the Clara Evans Charitable Fund is thriving. We have, as of this month, housed 17 elderly residents who were victims of domestic financial abuse. We have 3 full-time lawyers on staff who do nothing but fight fraudulent guardianship claims and recover stolen assets. I read every case file, which is why I see my daughter Maya every Friday. She doesn't know I'm watching. I sit in Lewis's office, and on the monitor I watch the live feed from the Foundation's case management floor. She is not a director. She is not a manager. She is not even an assistant. She is a case intake coordinator. She is the lowest paid full-time employee in the entire organization. She still lives in the 400-square-foot studio apartment on the south side. She still takes the bus to work. She still earns after taxes just enough to pay her $600 rent, buy her groceries, and put a small, painful amount into her new IRA account. An amount that the Clara Evans Trust is promised matches dollar for dollar. I watch her on the screen. She is different. She is 41 years old now. She wears simple clothes, a skirt and a blouse, no brands I would recognize. Her hair is clean but tied back simply. She wears no jewelry. She is thin, but she looks strong, not frail. An old woman, easily 80, is sitting at her desk, crying. The woman's son, she is explaining, took her checkbook. Maya is not coddling her. She is not making false promises. She is just listening. She slides a box of tissues across the desk. She waits. When the woman is finished, Maya speaks. Her voice is low, calm. "I understand," she says, "and I believe you. Here is what we are going to do first." She is competent. She is empathetic. She is exactly the woman Clara always wanted her to be. It took losing everything for her to find herself. That afternoon, she came to the penthouse. This is our new routine. Once a month, she delivers the intake reports to me in person. She doesn't come as my daughter. She comes as my employee. The elevator doors opened. She stepped into the living room holding a simple manila folder. "Dad," she said. It was a simple greeting. "Maya," I replied, not getting up. I gestured to the business chair she had sat in 6 months prior. "Have a seat. How are the new cases?" She sat her back straight, not on the edge of the cushion but in the center. She belonged here not as an heir but as a professional. "They're heavy," she said. She opened the folder. "We have 3 new guardianship flags this week. This one," she slid a paper toward me, "is particularly bad. A son-in-law just like—" She stopped. "Just like Greg," I finished for her. She nodded. "Yes, just like him." "And what is your recommendation?" I asked, looking at the file. "I've already assigned him to our legal team for an immediate injunction, and I've cross-referenced the property. The son-in-law is already trying to sell it, to a private cash-only buyer." I looked up at her. "He's using the same playbook." "It's always the same playbook," she said, her voice tired. "They think they're smart. They just think the elderly are stupid." We sat in silence for a moment, the chasm of our past between us, but the bridge of our new work connecting us. "The trust," I said, changing the subject. "Lewis tells me you've maxed out your IRA contribution for the quarter." "Yes," she said. It's not easy, but I'm doing it. I cut out my cable. I'm learning to cook more. I'm managing." "Good," I said. "Your mother would be proud of that." A small, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "I think so too. I wish I could tell her I'm sorry for not understanding her." "You can tell her," I said, "by continuing to do the work." She nodded. She gathered her files. "Well, that's all. I should get back. I have to catch the 5:45 bus." She stood up, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button. As the doors opened, she turned back to me. "Dad?" "Yes, Maya. I wanted to say thank you." "For what? For the trust, for the job?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "Thank you. For the key. Thank you for not letting me die on that sidewalk. You didn't have to. After what I did, you could have just driven away. But you gave me a chance." "It wasn't a chance, Maya," I said. "It was a test, and you haven't failed it. Not yet." She smiled again, a real smile this time. "I'll see you next month, Dad." "See you next month, Maya." The elevator doors closed and she was gone. I turned back to the window, back to my city. My daughter had stood in my kitchen and screamed, "Pay the rent or get out!" And I did. I got out. I left her to the man she had chosen. I let her walk headfirst into the trap she had helped him set. I sold the house out from under her. I froze her accounts. I exposed her husband as a thief, a gambler, and a fraud. I watched her world shatter on a cold, wet lawn. I destroyed the life she thought she deserved, the life of unearned luxury she had built on a foundation of lies. But in doing so, I gave her something real. I gave her the chance to build a life she could actually earn. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't a gift. It's a key to a 400-square-foot room. Sometimes the only way to save your child is to show them the necessary terrible cruelty of their own choices. Did you like my story? I want to know where you are watching this from, so let me know in the comments. And please, if you've ever had to learn a hard lesson or teach one, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories. Thank you for listening.